My view is that we need to work with communities. That's children and young people, it's families, it's professionals, it's civic society. We need to work with everybody at that level. We concentrate so much of the time at the international and the state party level, and sometimes we're missing out on that vital of ingredient and that major driver for change, which is what is happening in our communities.
I think we need to work with governments and to persuade the governments and the populations that children's rights are important, and that then it encourages governments to invest in children.
We have to be bolder, as was said in the lecture this morning. We have to be bolder about the children's rights movement that we're all part of. But we really have to move with young people and children. Yes, we consult with them. Yes, we participate with them in the processes we deal with at the national and international level. But for me, youth-led and child-led advocacy and activism and getting kids really involved in driving for the change to realise their own rights. Active agents of change, for me, is the key message.
Recently I was attending a kind of a symposium on, it was called Child-Friendly Justice. And it was the first time that I really learned about all the barriers of children to access the justice system. And I think in this area, for example, that some people pointed out are crucial, where you're not only informed about the rights, but where they also translate it into action. I mean, obviously very often in rather extreme cases, so you have to go to court. I think there is a lot of things that need to happen, and there need to be child-friendly web pages explaining how the justice system works. There need to be legal aid structures in place to assist children and their families, or children alone in going to court. And generally, I had the feeling that I was really surprised, because we have the Convention on the Rights of the Child. We had it for a long time. We have lots of we have constitutions that single out children as having particular rights. But still, the judiciary seemed to be one of the areas where the implementation has been rather slow, and also the awareness of judges and everyone else in the judiciary seemed to be quite low on children's rights. So I was really surprised about that. That's particular to my country, Germany, but maybe that's a field where I would say it's really critical. We need to take practical steps.
Apply UNCRC to become an actual law, so it would then be mandatory, and then for it to be monitored effectively, so that organisations and government bodies would prioritise children's needs and rights, so that they can have a better idea and understanding of their own rights, as well as benefiting from it to grow further in education and health and their own safety and well-being.
For me, practical steps is, first of all, we have to understand the barriers a lot better, because if we're dealing with in a global context, the barriers differ from country to country, culture to culture, whether that's working on the ground with our communities and our people, or whether or not it's actually trying to change things at a societal level, at a legislative level, or actually at a cultural level. But until we actually understand those individual barriers, we will struggle a little bit, and probably that's our best way for me.
I think that child participation would be an important thing, so engaging with children and letting them understand what their rights are, so that they have an awareness of what they should be receiving, and if they want to kind of say to someone that they don't feel their rights are being respected, they know how to do that, and they know who to speak to, and you have to teach children this in a way that's the right way for them at the kind of age and stage, and do it in a way that's kind of fun and engaging.
I think we can have more information and awareness raising on children's rights and on other human rights institutions, the UNCRC and other ones. And I also think that we can be making sure that not just children are educated about their rights, but also people that are involved in making decisions which affect young people, and make sure that there's more youth-led advocacy on children and young people's rights.
Education about rights is key, and we need to make rights real for people, so that it's not just an abstract, high-level document. You don't understand how that relates to your life. You need to understand how rights actually translate into practical actions in your day-to-day life. And young people need to know what their rights are, so that they can advocate for their own rights. But as we're an advocacy organisation, we also think it's really important that children have access to an independent advocate so that it can help them and make sure that their voice is heard whenever they're involved in decision-making processes about them.
There are a number of practical steps that can be taken by different people. So I think in terms of the government's responsibility, then they need to commit to take forward the concluding observations from the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child that were published last year in 2016. And they need to set out exactly what they're going to do in an action plan to take forward these recommendations, because they do articulate from the views of children and young people what can be done to progress the UNCRC. But it's not just down to government. I think it's important that civil society, that NGOs really work to raise awareness and understanding of children's rights, because if children don't know that they've got rights, how can they make sure that they're okay? And if adults don't understand the implications of children's rights, then how can we make sure that we really embed a rights-based culture across Scotland? So I think government needs to take forward its international obligations, but we as civil society need to raise awareness, we need to raise understanding and make sure that rights aren't just talked about in a niche, but they're talked about across communities and on the ground across Scotland.
I'm going to answer this as a parent. I have 4 young children and I come to quite a few of these conferences or discussions on children's rights, and every time I leave thinking, man, I'm a terrible parent and there's loads of things that I could do better. So I think if parents themselves were educated more on what children's rights are and the Convention on the Rights of the Child, then as the principal advocates for children's rights, who can also teach their own children, I think that would be the most effective way to make progress in implementing children's rights in Scotland.